The silicone can break down over 5, 6, 7 years, okay? So you might come back if you really want that beading action, or say if you have an area that really gets a lot of tagging and you're pressure washing, the way you gotta look at it is those crystals still can get pushed out and wash out on that surface, right? But this stuff will soak in, depending on the porosity of the concrete, up to 3/4 of an inch. So you're still getting a whole bunch of protection. It's just that very little bit on the surface that might need, and so a reapplication on something like that is basically a quarter application, because it'll repel itself, right? Like how much can you put back on? You'll spray it and it'll start beading, and like, oh, that's it.
So if you have a sidewalk, say that's been there 5 years, there's no color on it, there's no, and it's still in decent, you know, you can put this stuff on
the
here.
Pavix, as long as it hasn't been, as long as it hasn't been sealed. Like,
okay,
if you've had acrylic seal or something on it,
right,
we got to make sure that it's all gone, because we can't penetrate through it.
Right, exactly.
But 4,000 psi pressure washer will take any acrylic off, right? And we always say, pressure wash and clean it.
Right, you're gonna. Yeah.
The benefit, what we're doing is we're not doing a film. So we can penetrate through dust and dirt and particles. We don't really worry too much about it, but we want the surface clean. So does it need to be absolutely spotless? Not really, but cleaner's always better, right? So they say give it a pressure wash, you know. What we're finding on the colored stuff is, because this is a penetrating concrete, it doesn't protect the color, so it's not evenly protected. I know the guys, especially Mike Collins from Vertical Creation, was having big problems with the saltwater pools, because he has to put acrylic on, because he has to protect the color. Right? You pay all this money, and then what's happening is, and if you know acrylic, you're putting it on the surface, that concrete's rough like my fingers, and it soaks in, right? And they say, well, that's the soak in. It doesn't actually soak into the concrete, it soaks into the crevices, that's all it's doing. You stuff it, you break that little bit on the surface, the spot water comes in, and now they're just popping, right? Because over that first winter, the moisture now gets underneath the acrylic, it's got nowhere to go.
It's like the popping when it's popping. Yeah.
So we did a test last year with Mike. He says, I said, Mike, I've been telling him for 5 years. I said, we can solve your issue. I said, if you'd use the U-Fix as a curing seal instead of a curing seal, because the U-Fix will, when you spray it on a 3 or 4 day old concrete, will dry slowly. It'll hold the moisture in when you initially put it in, and as it dries, it'll slowly let the evaporation out so it cures properly. So we said, let's do a test. We put Pavix, U-Fix, and nothing, and then we put acrylic on top of it. And the reason why we did that is, down at City Center, we put hydropress slabs for Doug Kenyon. He wanted to change all of downtown, and he's like, I got this great idea at City Center, let's put all these slabs in, and so we did that. And then he's like, okay, so we got to protect this slabs. I says, yeah, this is the stuff, because we don't want to put acrylic or anything down. It's the city sidewalk, or you'd be crazy. So we went in and we sprayed it with Pavix. I sprayed a colored concrete with Pavix just because I'm experienced enough to know when to stop. Right? Like, you can do it as long as you're careful, because Pavix really is the best product, because you get both the crystals. And it just means you've got that one extra step, and they don't get the sheeting, because hydropress slabs are pretty level, but you have the little cracks and stuff, so you want that little bit of water to go through. The day before the presentation, on the Sunday, he went down and looked at it, and when we put that paving, we spray it, it darkens everything a little bit, but it doesn't make it shiny. It's not to show it off, it's to protect it. He didn't like that, and he went and put acrylic on top of it. And so then we were like, but anyways, this was 4 years ago. So when I talked to Mike last year, I said, let's go look. The acrylic was still there on a city sidewalk, and we couldn't figure it out. I'm from Texas, I said. On a city sidewalk, if somebody were to put acrylic down, it should be gone in a year of all the traffic and the scuffing. And they couldn't give me the answer to what happened. So then we tested it. And when we put the acrylic, and it can't be water-based, right? Because water-based will repel. So when we put the acrylic on top of this, he took his pressure washer to it. He'd flake it off of the 4,000 psi on the concrete, but he couldn't get it off of the Pavix or the U-Fix. So what we think is happening, if you have an area that you need that protection on, you can still treat it. You can put the acrylic on top of it, but what it's doing is it's pushing that acrylic to the surface.
And it's bonding it.
Well, no, I honestly, no one really knows, but I think what it's doing is pushes the acrylic to the surface. So then your acrylic now, instead of being this thick, is this thick, because it actually sits there like a perfect coat. So it's not thin anymore. It doesn't have any weak points. So that's the only thing we can think of. So then now, instead of trying to flake off this really tiny layer, it's this thick, and it just can't get it off.
So it's expanded then?
Not expanded, but no, remember what we said before, it would soak in.
Yeah.
So we filled all these voids up. So now it can't soak in, it just
So
sits there.
it's sitting there.
That's the only thing we can think of. And Texas is the same thing. That's the only thing we can think of. But we know we can do both now, right? We can do both, and if you really need it, you can do it. So I'll give you a quick demonstration. We've got penetrating stuff, okay? And your typical products, okay? I have Sofix in this bottle. They're all really similar, okay? The other thing that we learned last year from Texas, they let out of the bag, is I can take Pavix, and if I want to put a little U-Fix in it, I can make my own kind of hardness. If I got an area that is just like I say, a really damp area, it's really leaking through, I can take a little bit of Sofix if I want and mix it 50-50 with Pavix and increase the crystals. That's getting kind of crazy, but you can do it if a person really wants to start working with it and make something that's special. Sofix.
So say like on a foundation wall, a retaining wall, and you got cracks in it and that moisture is leaking through. So you could do that and it would seal, it would stop it from coming through then?
What it would do is depending on the size of the crack. Like when you look at a concrete crack and you look and go, that's a big crack, then that's a big crack, right? I mean, you're not gonna jam, I mean, we're putting stuff in that you can't see. But if you've got water coming through, say like on a foundation or something, you can spray it with Sofix and give it such a heavy patch of, and what the Sofix does, which is different from the rest of them, is it's a vapor blocker too. So the Sofix is got the most concentrations. It's about 100 times more concentrated than the Pavix and U-Fix. They use this in the States for water towers. So they'll build those concrete things, they'll buy a pail of this stuff, they'll go in and spray the inside of it and then fill it up with water. Because Sofix is 100% water. Like you can put this on dams, okay? That's what it was generated for. Like we did a repair last year at the Ramada pool. They put a pool inside of a pool. They did it all nice, and then Mike went in and he put Zypex in, right, to make sure that the water protected. There we go. But it's a commercial pool, right? Those guys are putting so much chemical in, it was eating the sides away, and it was deteriorating the Zypex to the point where they just had dirt at the bottom of the pool all the time. So then we drained it. We gave it a pressure wash, cleaned it all up, and we sprayed the whole thing with Sofix. And then when we did that, we've added the waterproofing breakers, and then they can fill their pool back up. And we actually, on that one, sprayed it with Sofix, and then they wanted it to have the dry look, and then we sprayed it with U-Fix on top of that, so that we had 2 layers to give them their dry look. Right. But Sofix for foundations and stuff, and again, vapor barrier. No gases can get through it.
So
really important. So if you have a concrete basement, like around here, you've got argon gases, you've got uranium gases, all sorts of stuff all over the place here. If it's poured concrete, you know, 1 inch or 2 thick, you can treat it with the Sofix and it's not going to let anything through. It's a vapor barrier. And again, I'm saying these things, but I can give you all the documentation and stuff for it. And again, so, you spray it on and in an hour and a half it's dry. Like if you did your basement, you don't smell anything. And I'm going to show you the sample so you can see that. So it's not like this big ventilation job. Clean, spray.
So now, like when we pour a foundation or basement slabs or whatever, or even in the garage, we have to put in the proper argon
rock. Yeah, you want to. You don't want to skip any of that stuff.
Yeah, but if you use that, could the guy get away with?
I don't think you can get away with it because that's building code, and this is. I mean, if I could get this approved for building code, that would be the thing. Then I would probably not even be here anymore, right? I'd be like, woohoo, it's done. But what it is for right now, for more practice, is when you guys have an issue already, there's a solution for it, right? If you got water, like we had one area where they, you know, sometimes these houses have the water tanks attached to the house, and it would seep in, where they've come in on the inside, where it's seeping in and sprayed it with the Sofix, and it can't get through, right? Because we water buried it, you know, and that little bit was enough just to block it. And with the Sofix, you can have water against it 24/7. Right? The bridge in Kelowna, when they were doing it, they had one section they did in 40-degree heat, and they didn't have it cooled down enough. I mean, how do you cool concrete down enough and keep it wet long enough to slowly cure? So it checked and was starting to crack and stuff, and they were freaking out about it. The stuff is green. It's the only stuff you can spray on bridges and stuff and over water. There's really nothing else. You can't go and, you know what I mean? So they went and took Pavix and sprayed their areas densified the concrete, right? Stopped all the hair lining. Then the engineers came back and like, what did you do? We just did this, right? So the products, that's the gist of it. There's 250 products. Like honestly, if there is a concrete problem that you guys have, if you were to say, Jay, what about this? iPhone, Texas, they go, this is it. Because this is all these guys do. They've been doing it for 30 years. This stuff was designed for airports. Because everything down in the States is airports, is concrete, right? And they were having real problems with sealing the concrete, for one, because it costs way too much money to rip up freaking airport concrete because of the rebar and all the other things they got to put into it. And the other thing is they skid resistance. They had jet planes on them. What are we going to do? Okay? These products will give you better skid resistance than not because they're getting rid of the water, right? Even on the U-Fix, where it could be on the surface, it is literally there, and it's a time frame thing, right? They'll time it for skid. On 10 minutes, it's gone. So it enhanced it, and that was the main reason why this all came about. This is Pavex, and then it's basically, this is just to show the consistency. I'm shaking it up because it's got crystals, right? It's like anything else. If it sits there, you'll see the little crystals in there. On the Sofix especially, you can probably have a look at the bottom and you can see them, right? So we just got to make sure that you give it a mix up. Something really important is it can't freeze. The formula in this, and you can open it up and have a look at it, that allows it to go in, and the water base has some special patent in it that is still a natural product, but when it freezes, it just destabilizes. We got an issue right now in Grand Forks. We did one bridge last year, and it's not repelling water this year. I have to go out and find out, okay, I know it's not the product because we've had no issues with the product. So did it freeze? Did they do it too late? Something's going on. The good thing is the guy's saying, well, it's absorbing water. I says, well, that's great. That's not a bad thing, because if it was applied wrong or it froze, if it's absorbing water, I can reapply, right? Just put more into it till it can absorb water. If it can't absorb water, then we've got it. The pool, when we were doing the Sofix, we were actually able to spray it 3 times because it was so checked and it had so many voids that I just kept putting it in and kept putting it in. It absorbed it again, it absorbed it again, and then it was like, okay, it's not absorbing it anymore. So even if it has something like that happens, it's not the end of the world. If we can get it back into it, it's good. So,
and it's easy to tell when it's being absorbed and
yeah, okay. And I'm going to show you guys that right now. And you had a chance to look at it? Did you open it up and smell it?
Give her a quick smell.
There's no smell to it.
No.
None.
You think it's water, and for employees, it's so wonderful because it's like, you know, acrylic can just make you sick and look and stink, and you have to be careful what it goes on. I mean, you have to be careful with stuff. You don't want spraying it on wood and all that sort of thing because it'll do weird things, right? One of my partners, you know what he did is he went and sprayed Pavex on his cedar shakes.
Why not? It works.
It does work though, because it soaks into the wood, it repels water. Then I told him, I says, now your cedar shakes are never going to absorb water. Like, do you know anything about roofing? Because cedar's supposed to absorb a bit of water and expand. Now it's just going to dry up and blow away. And he's like, oh. And I'm like, ask questions before. But
there's a new roof.
Parging, like this is great. Parging and stucco, conventional stucco.
Wow.
You spray U-Fix on conventional stucco, it's acrylic.
It's not going to crack and fall off.
No. Cultured stone. I did my house, and I've got YouTube. If you go into 5 Point and look onto YouTube, I have cultured stone in my house. Cultured stone is porous concrete. It's super porous concrete because it's got styrofoam and stuff in it. I spray my cultured stone, and it just beads up. Protected forever. All my walls that we do for retaining walls and stuff, for effervescence, we'll spray them. Because you're always going to get a bit through the leaching, but when it comes out, you pressure wash it off. You don't have to sit out there with a chemical cleaner and scrub it and all these other things. People are like, oh my God, it's there. It's like, of course it's there because it's coming through the cracks. It's leaching from the back. I haven't took the block and dipped it in Pavex. I just sprayed the surface where I know I'm going to see it and I might have an issue.
That's what we do. We gotta go. I got lots of things to do. We got a couple of yet, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I speed up or you're gone?
No, we gotta go, man.
You know
Sorry.
I'm gonna phone Dan, the other Dan. Can you just radio him to come up?
Yeah, sure.
You should watch this too.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna go.
Yeah, I
Oh,
gotta go.
these
Yeah.
guys can give you the rest.
No, I gotta go too.
You're gonna go too.
Yeah, I have to go.
The Pong